It's just after 3 in the morning on November 13th, 1974. A cold, damp wind is blowing off the river in Amityville, Long Island. Inside a grand Dutch Colonial home at 112 Ocean Avenue, the DeFeo family is asleep. Ronald Sr. and Louise in their bed, their children, Dawn, Allison, Mark, and John Matthew in theirs. The only sound is the family dog, Shaggy, barking into the darkness. A few hours later, 6 gunshots from a high-powered rifle will echo through the house, but the town, just a stone's throw away, will later claim it heard nothing. This silence, where chaos should have been, is the first chilling mystery of Amityville. You think you know this story? A haunted house with bleeding walls and demonic pigs. But what if I told you the real horror of Amityville isn't about ghosts? It's one of America's most misunderstood true crime cases. A story where 6 brutal murders, a web of lies, and a ravenous media machine gave birth to a legend that devoured the truth. Before this house became a spectacle, it was a home. Let's remember who was lost. Ronald DeFeo Sr., a stern but hard-working father who ran a car dealership. His wife, Louise, known for her impeccable style and devotion to her kids. 19-year-old Dawn, the eldest daughter with a fiery spirit. 18-year-old Allison, the gentle soul. 12-year-old Mark, a boy with health struggles, but a kind heart. And little 9-year-old John Matthew, the baby of the family. They were a family with birthdays, arguments, and inside jokes. Their photos sat on tables. Their school notes were pinned to a board. They were real. That night, their lives were ended by someone they knew and trusted. The eldest son, 23-year-old Ronald Butch DeFeo Jr., using a .35 caliber Marlin rifle, he moved from room to room. The crime scene posed a disturbing puzzle for investigators. All 6 victims were found face down in their beds, as if they never woke up. Toxicology reports found no traces of sedatives or drugs. How could 6 people, in different rooms, be shot with a powerful rifle without a single one being roused from their sleep, without a single neighbor hearing the blasts? The house, with its iconic quarter-moon windows that look like watching eyes, was already becoming a character in its own dark story. Initially, the whispers around town pointed to something else entirely. A mob hit? Maybe. Ronald Sr. had connections, and rumors flew about family arguments and hidden money. The police even considered that possibility. For a few frantic hours, Butch played the part of the grieving son, the sole survivor who discovered the horrific scene. But the investigators were focused, and the story wasn't adding up. The focus, slowly, surely, turned away from a professional hitman and toward the only person left alive in that house. The tension in the town was thick enough to cut with a knife. What the neighbors thought had happened was colliding with what the evidence was starting to scream. The story truly begins late the next evening. The doors of Henry's bar swing open, and a frantic Butch DeFeo runs in, shouting, "You gotta help me! I think my mother and father are shot." A small group of men follows him out into the cold night and back down the street to 112 Ocean Avenue. As they approach, the flashing red and blue of police lights are already beginning to stain the home's siding. The real story was just beginning. By the next morning, the police would have a suspect. But by the next year, the world would have 1,000 different explanations, each one more terrifying than the last. And the truth, it was just getting started on its long journey to being buried. Thanks for watching. If you want to uncover what really happened, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. The silence in that house was the first thing that hit you. It wasn't empty silence. It was heavy, pressing in on the detectives as they stepped over the threshold. The low hum of the refrigerator was the only sound. Laid out in their beds, the family looked almost peaceful, as if they were just sleeping. But the pattern was all wrong. 6 people, all in the same position, face down. No signs of a struggle, no overturned furniture, nothing out of place. It was this eerie, chilling orderliness that made the scene so deeply unsettling. How could this happen? Initially, investigators chased the theory of a mob hit, but the story didn't hold up. The focus soon shifted inward, landing on the only surviving family member, 23-year-old Ronald DeFeo Jr. His initial statements were inconsistent, his alibi full of holes. He claimed he was at a bar, but the timeline started to unravel. Then, a crucial discovery: a high-powered 35 caliber Marlin rifle hidden away. Investigators also found discarded cartridges and bloody pillowcases. The pieces were starting to form a terrifying picture, pointing directly at the sun. The case exploded in the courtroom. Ronald Jr.'s defense was shocking. He claimed he heard voices, sinister whispers that commanded him to kill. They argued he was insane, lost in a world of hallucinations. The prosecution painted a different portrait, one of motive and malice. They spoke of a troubled young man, his escalating drug use, and simmering family conflicts. They brought up disputed claims of abuse within the family, suggesting a breaking point had been reached. It became a battle of narratives. Was he a victim of his own mind or a calculating killer? The trial brought a chorus of voices trying to make sense of the impossible. A forensic pathologist testified that, strangely, there were no sedatives found in the victim's systems. How could 6 people be shot without a single one waking up or fighting back? Neighbors swore they never heard any gunshots that night, despite the rifle having no silencer. A detective on the scene remained haunted by the victim's placid positions. Even a juror later recalled how their initial doubt slowly hardened into a firm conviction as the evidence mounted. These were the puzzle pieces that just didn't fit, creating a fog of questions that still lingers today. Ultimately, the jury delivered its verdict. Ronald DeFeo Jr. was found guilty on 6 counts of second-degree murder. The judge handed down the sentence: 25 years to life for each count, a punishment meant to keep him behind bars forever. The legal chapter closed, but the story was far from over. The house at 112 Ocean Avenue, now infamous, went back on the market at a steep discount. It sat there, a monument to a tragedy, waiting. And then, just over a year later, a young couple saw a chance for their dream home. George and Kathy Lutz. Full of hope, they signed the papers. Ignoring the whispers and the dark history, the realtor handed them the keys, the cold metal hitting their palms with a finality, like a judge's gavel. They had no idea what they were walking into. 28 days later, they would flee the house in terror, claiming it was possessed by an evil force. Their story would transform a horrific crime into a legendary haunting, leaving America to wonder what truly happened inside those walls. The story of 112 Ocean Avenue was no longer just a local tragedy. It became a phenomenon. Jay Anson's book, The Amityville Horror, flew off the shelves, followed by a blockbuster film that seared the house's quarter-round windows. Like malevolent eyes, into the public consciousness. Suddenly, Ocean Avenue was choked with tourists, all craning their necks to glimpse the most famous haunted house in America. The house wasn't just a home anymore, it had become an icon of terror. The world split into two camps: believers and skeptics. On one side, you had famed paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. After their investigation, they declared the house was infested by a demonic presence, a gateway to something ancient and evil. Their findings electrified audiences, giving an official stamp of supernatural authority to the Lutz's terrifying tale. But on the other side, skeptics armed themselves with facts. Researchers pored over police logs from the time the Lutzes were in the house and found nothing. No frantic calls to the police, no record of the chaos described. Adding to the doubt, every family that lived in the house after the Lutzes reported zero paranormal activity, just creaks and groans, the normal sounds of an old Dutch Colonial. The battle wasn't just fought in the public imagination, it moved to the courtroom. The Lutzes sued William Weber, Ronald DeFeo Jr., his defense attorney, for defamation, claiming he'd exploited their story. Weber countersued, alleging the whole thing was a hoax concocted with the Lutzes over several bottles of wine. The lawsuits became a tangled mess of settlements and dismissals, a legal shadow that stretched for years. It showed how a good story and a hard fact are judged very differently under the law. The truth of what happened inside those walls became less important than who owned the rights to the narrative. And while the world debated ghosts and demons, Ronald DeFeo Jr. sat in prison, the one person who knew what truly happened that night. His story became a moving target. Over the years, he changed his account again and again. First, he claimed mobsters were involved. Then, he implicated his sister, Dawn, before retracting it. His narrative was a labyrinth of contradictions, a desperate, shifting story from a man convicted of an unthinkable crime. It's easy to get lost in the noise, so let's remember the names of the real victims: Ronald Sr., Louise, Dawn, Allison, Mark, and John Matthew DeFeo. Their lives were the tragic core of this story, long before it became a legend. The Amityville Horror became a masterclass in myth-making. The pipeline from crime to commerce was ruthlessly efficient. Royalties poured in, sequels were churned out. The family's 28 Days of Terror became a pop culture shorthand for any haunted house story. An unresolved, brutal forensic puzzle was repackaged and sold as a supernatural campfire tale, a franchise built on a foundation of genuine tragedy. The machine was unstoppable. But even if you strip away the demonic pigs and green slime, unsettling questions remain, hanging in the air like dust motes in a moonbeam. They are the anomalies that defy easy explanation. Why did no one in the DeFeo family wake up as a high-powered rifle was fired 6 times throughout the house? Neighbors didn't hear a thing. How is that possible? And perhaps the most chilling detail of all, why were all 6 victims found in the exact same position, lying face down in their beds? Acoustic experts have offered theories about sound baffling. Psychologists have talked about the depths of sleep and fear paralysis. But these are just hypotheses. They don't close the case. The questions remain, like a door left ajar in the dead of night, inviting us to wonder what really waits on the other side. Today, the house on Ocean Avenue stands quiet. The iconic eye windows have been replaced with standard square ones. The address has even been changed to deter the endless stream of morbid sightseers. It looks like any other house on the block, its secrets held tightly within its walls. The Haunting of Amityville was a story America desperately wanted to believe. But in our rush to embrace the ghosts, what truth did we leave behind? Just weeks after the DeFeo family tragedy, on December 18th, 1975, the Lutz family moved into 100 Tourist 12 Ocean Avenue. It was the Christmas season, a time for new beginnings. George and Kathy Lutz, along with her 3 children from a previous marriage, saw the house as a dream come true. A beautiful, spacious Dutch Colonial at a price that was almost unbelievable. They knew what had happened there, of course. The whole town knew. But they were determined to fill the home with new, happy memories. Boxes were stacked against the same walls where a family had been lost. But the Lutzes were focused on the future, a blended family starting a fresh chapter. The weight of the house's history was something they believed they could overcome. Almost immediately, according to the family, the house began to push back. It started with small, unsettling things, a deep, bone-chilling cold that seemed to settle in specific rooms, impervious to the roaring fireplace. George, in particular, felt it constantly. Then, despite the dead of winter, swarms of houseflies would appear in the sewing room, a strange and biblical plague. The family reported hearing phantom footsteps, not just creaks and groans, but what sounded like a marching band parading through the house. Kathy said she found a crucifix on the wall had been turned upside down on its own. Strange green, gelatinous slime would reportedly ooze from the walls in the hallway and from the keyholes of doors. Their youngest daughter, Missy, began talking about a new imaginary friend she called Jody, an entity she described as a pig with glowing red eyes. Concerned, the Lutzes asked a friend, a Catholic priest named Father Ray, to bless the home. The story that unfolded became a cornerstone of the legend. According to the accounts, as the priest entered an upstairs bedroom and began to sprinkle holy water, he was allegedly hit by an unseen force and heard a booming, masculine voice command, "Get out." He reportedly left the house shaken, later telling George to stay out of that specific room. It's crucial to note that the local diocese has since stated they have no official records of this event, and the priest's involvement remains a point of heavy dispute. But for the Lutzes, it was a terrifying confirmation that something was deeply wrong. The pressure mounted, both psychologically and financially. The strange occurrences escalated. George's personality began to change. He became withdrawn, obsessed with keeping the fireplace stoked day and night, even as the family shivered. He was plagued by sleep deprivation, waking up at 3:15 a.m. every morning, the estimated time of the DeFeo murders. The family's finances, already strained by the new mortgage, began to crumble as their businesses suffered. The idyllic dream of a new life was unraveling into a nightmare of stress, fear, and mounting debt. Were they a family under supernatural attack, or a family simply collapsing under immense pressure in a house with a dark past? The line became increasingly blurred. It was during this time that a new element entered the story. The Lutzes made contact with William Weber, the defense attorney who had represented Ronald DeFeo Jr. This is where the narrative splits dramatically. Years later, Weber would claim that he and the Lutzes concocted the entire haunting story over many bottles of wine. He called it a hoax, a money-making scheme they developed together. The Lutzes, however, have always vehemently denied this. For the rest of their lives, they maintained that their terrifying experiences in that house were absolutely real. This unresolved contradiction sits at the very heart of the Amityville mystery. Was it a genuine haunting, a calculated hoax, or something in between? The family's ordeal, whatever its source, reached a terrifying climax on the 28th day. On the night of January 14th, 1976, they reported that all hell broke loose. Doors were said to have slammed open and shut, furniture moved on its own, and George claimed to have seen Kathy levitate off their bed. They described seeing a dark, hooded figure in the hallway, its form coalescing in the shadows. This was the final straw. In a state of pure panic, the family, George, Kathy, the 3 children, and their dog Harry, fled the house with practically nothing. They left behind their clothes, furniture, even the Christmas presents still under the tree. They ran out into the cold night and never returned. By dawn, 112 Ocean Avenue was once again empty. The Lutzes were gone, but their story was just beginning. Within days, their account had an agent, a book deal was in the works, and a nation hungry for a good ghost story was about to get the scare of a lifetime. The haunting of the house was over, but the haunting of American pop culture was about to begin. The real question wasn't just what happened in that house, but what happens when a story like that gets loose in the world. What sells in America, and what gets lost in the telling? But let's dim the lights for a moment. Let's turn away from the Hollywood posters and the sensational headlines. Let's stand here in the quiet and remember the names that started it all. Ronald DeFeo Sr., Louise DeFeo, Dawn, Allison, Mark, and John Matthew. 6 people, a family. Their lives ended in this house on a cold November night, long before it was ever branded the Amityville Horror. The story that followed, the one the world knows, is built upon their graves, and no amount of fame, no number of books or movies can ever balance that weight. The truth is, Amityville isn't one clean story. It's a chaotic collision of events. It's the brutal, horrifying reality of a familicide. It's the fractured, contradictory testimonies that followed. It's the crushing financial strain on a young family, the Lutzes, who bought a house they couldn't afford. It's the powerful amplification of media, hungry for a narrative. And it's a nation, at that time, grappling with immense social change, ready and willing to transform a local tragedy into a national folklore of fear. These separate streams crashed together right here at 112 Ocean Avenue and created a tidal wave that swept the truth out to sea. One of the most haunting questions remains. How could 6 people be shot in their beds with a high-powered rifle and no one wake up? No neighbors heard a thing. The forensic evidence leaves us grasping at shadows. Experts have proposed theories: the unique acoustics of the house, the muffling effect of a stormy night, the possibility that the victims were shot in a specific order during their deepest sleep cycles. Toxicology reports found no sedatives, which only deepens the mystery. Was it the profound shock of the first shot that paralyzed the others? We can dissect the reports, analyze the sound patterns, but we will likely never know for certain. And in that not knowing, we must pivot from a need for cold explanation back to human empathy. We must remember the terror of those final moments, a terror that defies any simple forensic answer. Then came the Lutzes. Their 28 days in the house became the bedrock of the legend They maintained their story of paranormal torment until their dying days. Yet, Ronald DeFeo's own lawyer, William Weber, later claimed he and the Lutzes created this horror story over many bottles of wine. The Catholic Church, whose priest allegedly blessed the house and was tormented, has consistently downplayed or outright denied the official involvement described in the book. And what about the families who lived in the house after the Lutzes? They reported nothing. Decades of quiet, normal life. Children growing up. Holidays being celebrated. No floating pigs. No swarms of flies. No demonic voices. The story of Amityville isn't about finding the single truth. It's about understanding how these stark contradictions were allowed to stand side by side, each one acting as fuel for the fire of the legend. The ambiguity itself became the engine. The legacy of Amityville is undeniable, but it's not supernatural. It's a community forever altered. It's a street address, officially changed to protect the residents from endless streams of morbid tourists. It's a cottage industry of sequels, documentaries, and ghost tours. It's a mountain of legal paperwork from lawsuits and disputes over the story's profits. And it's a set of horror movie tropes: the haunted house, the tormented family, the based on a true story tagline that have outlived almost everyone originally involved. It serves as a powerful and frankly uncomfortable reflection of our culture's relationship with true crime. It shows how easily victims can be eclipsed by the myth their tragedy spawned, and it forces us to question the cost of our own appetite for a good scare. In the end, after all the cameras have been packed away and the ghost hunters have gone home, it's just a house, a beautiful Dutch Colonial on the water where the river moves and the cold winter air settles. Ronald DeFeo Jr. died in custody in 2021, taking whatever final truths he held with him. The families of the victims never stopped grieving. The spectacle has faded, but the loss remains. The horror wasn't in the walls. It was in the violent act that took place within them, and in the shadow that act cast for decades to come. We tell these stories not for the spectacle, but for the humanity at their core. If you believe in remembering the people behind the legends, subscribe for more true stories that shaped our world. And please, share this with someone who only knows the poster, not the people. Thank you for watching.